A billionaire finds two twin girls leaving a drawing on his son's grave. When he sees what they drew, he is shocked and starts to cry. The clock showed exactly 8:30 in the morning when Nathaniel Reeves parked his car at the entrance to the cemetery, punctual as always. Not even death had changed his habits. The keys turned in the ignition one last time before silence fell. Nathaniel remained seated, looking through the windshield at the iron gate he knew so well. A sigh escaped his lips as he adjusted his tie, an automatic gesture, like so many others in his life now. He picked up the flowers from the passenger seat, white lilies, her favorites. He never brought anything specific for Oliver. What would a 9-year-old boy like to receive at a grave? This question tormented him every month. His steps along the stone walkway followed the same rhythm as always. He greeted the groundskeeper with a brief nod and turned right at the third fork. 20 more steps, and he would be there. He knew the way by heart. "Time heals everything, Mr. Reeves," the therapist had said in the last session, before Nathaniel decided he no longer needed therapy. What a joke. Time didn't heal anything. It only taught you to carry the emptiness around like a work briefcase, something heavy you take everywhere but never open in front of others. The double headstone came into view. Grey marble, simple and elegant, just like Emily and Oliver had been in life. Somewhere in his mind, Nathaniel knew Emily would have approved of the choice. She always preferred things without exaggeration. "Good morning," he murmured to the wind, as he did every month, 3 years, 2 months and 18 days. That was the exact time since the accident. A truck, a miscalculated turn, a phone call at 3 in the morning that destroyed his world. He had been in a meeting in Chicago when it happened. He never forgave himself for not being in the car with them. As he approached to place the flowers, something different caught his attention. A piece of paper rested on the smooth stone. That was unusual. No one but him ever visited this grave. Nathaniel leaned over to pick up the object. It was a crayon drawing, the kind of art small children make in kindergarten. 3 stick figures holding hands, smiling under a bright yellow sun. 2 identical girls with intensely red hair. And in the middle, a boy with brown hair. His fingers trembled. The boy in the drawing wore a green t-shirt, Oliver's favorite, and on his left wrist, a blue line represented the bracelet his son never took off, a gift from his last birthday. That was when he heard soft, quick footsteps moving away. Nathaniel looked up and saw 2 small silhouettes turning behind a nearby tombstone. 2 identical girls with red pigtails, no older than 5, so small they could barely see over the lower headstones. "Wait!" The word escaped his mouth before he could think. But the girls had already disappeared among the graves, their hurried steps echoing briefly before vanishing completely. Nathaniel looked again at the drawing in his hands. The boy was undoubtedly Oliver. The same details Oliver insisted on adding in all his drawings. The green t-shirt, the blue bracelet, even the slightly crooked smile on the right side. How did such small children know his son in such intimate detail? Oliver had never mentioned any twin friends. Emily had never talked about them. Who were these children, and why did they bring flowers and drawings for his son? A strange feeling took over his chest. It wasn't just pain, as in the last 3 years, but something else. Curiosity. A spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. The drawing shook in his hands as the first tears ran down his face. They weren't only tears of sadness this time. They were tears of confusion, of unanswered questions, of a mystery that now opened up before him when he least expected it. His eyes burned as he stared at the spot on the horizon where the girls had disappeared. His grief routine, for the first time in 3 years, had been broken. Nathaniel folded the drawing carefully and placed it in the inside pocket of his suit jacket, next to his heart. Something told him that his mechanical and empty life was about to change forever. Nathaniel couldn't sleep that night. The drawing of the 3 children holding hands stayed on his bedside table while he stared at the ceiling. The little red-headed twins seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, like ghosts, leaving only questions behind. The next morning, he called the office and informed them he would be late. For the first time in years, something other than work occupied his thoughts. He returned to the cemetery as soon as the gates opened. The drawing was safely in his pocket as he walked toward the small administration office in the center of the grounds. A discreet sign read, "Management," on the worn wooden door. "Good morning," he said to the gray-haired lady sitting behind the desk. Her name tag read Martha. "I need some information." Martha looked up from the papers she was organizing. "How can I help you, sir?" "Yesterday I saw two small girls here, red-headed twins, about 5 years old. They left a drawing on my son's grave." The woman's face lit up with a smile. "Ah, Sophie and Clara. They're adorable, aren't they?" Nathaniel felt a shiver upon hearing the names confirmed so easily, so he hadn't imagined it. "Do they come here often?" "Every week," Martha replied, adjusting her glasses. "They always bring drawings and wildflowers they pick along the way. Little kind souls." Nathaniel hesitated before asking the next question. "Where do they come from? Who are their parents?" Martha's smile faded a bit. "They're from Hope Haven, the orphanage on Pine Avenue, 2 blocks from here. They don't have parents, poor things." An orphanage. The word hung in the air like a revelation. Oliver and Emily had never mentioned visits to an orphanage. Or had they? And he'd been too busy to listen. "Do you know the place?" Nathaniel asked. "Sure. Many children from there visit our cemetery. The director, Mrs. Eleanor, believes it helps with the grieving process. Some of them lost their parents recently." Martha studied him curiously. "Why the interest in the girls, Mr. Reeves, Nathaniel Reeves?" He took the drawing out of his pocket and unfolded it on the desk. "They drew my son. I want to understand how they knew him." Martha examined the drawing and her gaze softened. "I see. Hope Haven is open to visitors during the day. I'm sure Mrs. Eleanor can help you." Nathaniel thanked her and left. Sitting in his car, he looked at the address Martha had written on a piece of paper. The idea of going to an orphanage made him uncomfortable. What business did he have there? Wouldn't it be better to forget the whole thing? But he couldn't get the image of the 2 little girls out of his mind. He started the car and drove slowly through the city streets. Pine Avenue was a quiet, tree-lined road with well-preserved old houses. Almost at the end, he spotted a large Victorian-style brick building surrounded by a small garden. A carved wooden sign read, "Hope Haven, a home for children." Nathaniel parked but stayed in the car for a few minutes. He was about to step into a world he didn't know, for reasons he couldn't even explain to himself. What would he say? "Hello, I don't know your children, but they draw my deceased son." Finally, he mustered the courage and got out of the car. The stone path to the entrance was lined with well-tended flower beds. The sound of children's laughter came from the side yard. He rang the bell and waited. A woman in her 50s opened the door. Tall, calm, with an upright posture. Brown hair streaked with grey, pulled back into a simple bun. There was something in her expression that conveyed both authority and kindness. "May I help you?" she asked. "My name is Nathaniel Reeves. I'm looking for Mrs. Eleanor." "That's me. How can I help you, Mr. Reeves?" Nathaniel suddenly felt nervous. I'm here about Sophie and Clara." Eleanor's smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a cautious look. "Do I know you?" "No. But..." He pulled out the drawing from his pocket. "They left this on my son's grave yesterday." Eleanor examined the drawing, and her face softened with recognition. She opened the door wider. "We'd better talk in my office, Mr. Reeves." Inside, the orphanage was surprisingly warm and inviting. Wide hallways, walls painted in soft colors, decorated with framed children's drawings. Nathaniel followed Eleanor to a room at the end of the corridor. "Please, have a seat," she said, indicating a chair in front of her desk. "The girls left this drawing at the cemetery." "Yes, on my son Oliver's grave. He passed away 3 years ago along with my wife." Eleanor nodded, as if she already knew. "I'm sorry for your loss." "What intrigues me," Nathaniel continued, "is how children that young know my son. They couldn't have been more than 2 when he didn't finish the sentence. Eleanor folded her hands on the desk. "Sophie and Clara have been with us since they were babies. They were left at our door when they were just a few weeks old." There was a moment of silence. Nathaniel waited for her to continue, but Eleanor seemed to be considering how much she should reveal. "Did they know my son?" he insisted. "The drawing shows very specific details. The green shirt he loved, the blue bracelet. Did you come here out of curiosity, Mr. Reeves? The question caught him off guard. Yes, I suppose I did. Eleanor studied him for a moment. Their names are Sophie and Clara, she finally confirmed. But I can't discuss more details about our children with someone who is still a stranger, even if well-intentioned. I hope you understand. Nathaniel felt a pang of frustration, but he nodded. Of course, I understand. As he rose to leave, he heard laughter coming from the garden through the open window. He stepped closer and saw a group of children playing. Among them, the two identical red-headed girls running hand in hand. They look happy, he commented. We do our best, Eleanor replied, standing beside him. Despite their circumstances, Nathaniel felt there was much more to this story than Eleanor was willing to share. Something connected his son to these girls, and he needed to find out what. May I come back another day? He asked. Eleanor hesitated before answering. Our doors are always open to those with good intentions, Mr. Reeves. On his way out, Nathaniel looked once more at the red brick building. The mystery of the twins and their connection to Oliver had only deepened. Something was hidden beneath the surface, something important that he needed to uncover. For the first time since the accident, Nathaniel felt a purpose beyond mere survival. 3 days went by before Nathaniel gathered the courage to return to Hope Haven. 3 days spent rummaging through drawers for clues about Emily and Oliver's activities that he might have missed. He found nothing. No photos, no mentions in schedules, nothing to explain their link to the twins. On Friday, after leaving the office early, Nathaniel drove to the orphanage. This time, he brought a small package wrapped in colorful paper. If he was going to talk to children, he needed a peace offering. Eleanor answered the door, not looking surprised to see him again. Mr. Reeves, I thought you might return. I'd like to speak with them, if possible, Nathaniel said bluntly. Eleanor studied his face for a moment. Come in. The girls are in the recreation room. The orphanage interior seemed busier this time. Children of various ages moved along the corridors, some looking curiously at the visitor in suit and tie. Nathaniel felt out of place, like a penguin among brightly colored birds. Eleanor led him to a large room at the end of the hall. Toys organized on shelves, low tables with paper and crayons, and a circular rug in the center where several children played. In one corner, sitting together as always, the twins were busy drawing. Sophie, Clara, Eleanor called out. There's someone here who would like to talk to you. The girls looked up simultaneously. Their eyes fell on Nathaniel, and he saw immediate recognition in their green gaze. There was no doubt. They knew who he was. This is Mr. Reeves, Eleanor introduced. He found the drawing you left at the cemetery. Sophie, or maybe Clara. Nathaniel couldn't tell them apart, bit her lip nervously. The other held her sister's hand. May we talk a bit? Nathaniel asked, lowering himself to their eye level. The twins exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations only twins seem able to have. Finally, one of them nodded. You can use the reading room, Eleanor suggested, pointing to a side door. I'll leave you to talk, but I'll be nearby if you need anything. The small room was lined with shelves full of children's books, and brightly colored beanbags were scattered on the floor. Nathaniel sat somewhat awkwardly on one of them, while the girls took another, still holding hands. I brought something for you, he said, offering the package. After another silent exchange of looks, the girl on the right took the gift and opened it carefully. Inside were 2 small sketchbooks and a box of crayons. Thank you, she said quietly. It was the first word Nathaniel heard from them. You're welcome. What are your names? I'm Sophie, answered the same girl. She's Clara, Clara waved shyly, still not letting go of her sister's hand. You made a really beautiful drawing, Nathaniel continued. The boy in the middle, that's my son, Oliver, isn't it? The 2 girls' eyes lit up at the mention of his name. Yes, Sophie exclaimed, suddenly excited. Oliver is our friend. Was, Clara corrected softly. He went to heaven. Nathaniel felt a tightness in his chest. How did you meet Oliver? He came here with Aunt Emily, Sophie answered. Aunt Emily, Nathaniel repeated, confused. The nice lady, Clara explained. She told us stories and brought cookies. And Oliver played with us, Sophie added. He was really nice. A wave of confusion washed over Nathaniel. Emily came to the orphanage, brought Oliver along. How had he never known about this? When did they visit? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Every Saturday, Sophie replied promptly. After lunch. Saturday afternoons. Nathaniel was usually at the office then, even on weekends. Emily would say she was taking Oliver to educational activities, and he never questioned it. He never asked for details. What did you do together? The twins grew animated at the question, gradually losing their initial shyness. We played hide and seek, said Sophie, and he read books to us, Clara added. Even when we didn't know the hard words. He drew really well, Sophie went on. He taught us how to make clouds using cotton on paper. And funny monsters using our hands, Clara chimed in, smiling as she made shadow shapes on the wall with her fingers. Every word was like a painful revelation to Nathaniel. They spoke of an Oliver he barely knew, a patient, creative boy, kind to younger children. A boy whose life had dimensions his own father had completely ignored. Aunt Emily said we were like Oliver's little sisters, Sophie commented simply. Clara nodded enthusiastically. He wanted us to live with you. Nathaniel felt as if he'd been punched. Oliver wanted the twins to be part of the family. Emily viewed the girls like daughters. You two are 5, right? He asked, doing the math quickly. Yes, we turned 5 last month, Sophie replied. That meant Emily and Oliver started visiting when the girls were just babies, years of involvement he knew nothing about. Oliver made this drawing for us, Clara said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her dress pocket. It was a simple drawing of 5 figures holding hands, a man, a woman, a boy, and 2 little girls, a family. Nathaniel immediately recognized his son's style. The drawing was slightly faded and crumpled, as if it were a treasured object handled frequently. He said that one day we would all be a real family, Sophie explained, pointing at the picture. A knot formed in Nathaniel's throat. There was a whole side to his family's life that he had never known. While he spent hours at the office building a financial empire, Emily and Oliver were building bridges between their privileged world and this orphanage. Aunt Emily promised she would talk to you, Clara said, looking directly at him for the first time, but then she and Oliver went to heaven. Nathaniel couldn't hold back his tears, years wasted by being too busy, too distracted, too confident that he knew his family. Now 2 5-year-old girls were revealing an Oliver he had never really seen, a boy who dreamed of a bigger family, who had already chosen 2 little sisters. Are you sad? Sophie asked, tilting her head. A little, Nathaniel admitted, but I'm also happy to meet you both. The girls smiled shyly. We're happy too, Clara said. Oliver talked about you a lot. What did he say? Nathaniel asked, almost afraid of the answer. That you were really busy, Sophie replied innocently. That you worked a lot and didn't have time. He wanted you to play with him more, Clara added. But he said one day you'd have time for us too. Nathaniel wiped his eyes. For the first time, he realized how much he had lost by living on autopilot. His son had dreams and plans he never knew how to appreciate. I'm sure Oliver was right, he finally said, and, to his surprise, he realized he was speaking the truth. The sun was setting when Nathaniel parked in front of his house. The 3-story mansion, with its imposing facade and immaculate garden, looked more like a magazine photo than a home. He remained in the car for a few minutes, staring at the dark windows. Nobody waited for him inside. The twins' words echoed in his mind. He wanted you to play with him more. A simple truth, spoken with the brutal honesty only children possess. Finally, he found the strength to leave the car. The walk to the front door had never felt so long. Each step brought a new realization of how disconnected he had been from Oliver and Emily, even while they were alive. The house was silent as a tomb. Nathaniel turned on the lights, but the brightness only accentuated the emptiness. He set his briefcase on the entryway console. For the first time in years, he felt no urgency to review documents. His steps led him automatically to the bar in the living room. He poured himself a whiskey and took a long sip. The liquid burned his throat, but didn't ease the weight on his chest. Slowly, he began walking through the house as if seeing it for the first time. In the dining room, The large table for 12 had never hosted more than a few colleagues for formal dinners. Emily always wanted more casual gatherings with friends and family, but he always said he didn't have time for that sort of thing. In the spotless kitchen, there was only one mug in the sink, his lonely breakfast. Emily enjoyed cooking. She tried to make family meals on weekends, but he was frequently absent. Occupied with some urgent conference call, he climbed the stairs, still holding the whiskey. In the second-floor hallway, he stopped at Oliver's door. It was always kept closed. He took a deep breath and turned the knob. The room was exactly as Oliver had left it. The bed was made, toys were neatly on the shelves, and books lined up. It looked like a museum, not a 9-year-old's bedroom. Emily had kept everything in order, yes, but now Nathaniel realized the space was artificially perfect. Where were the signs of life, the marks of carefree childhood? His gaze fell on the desk. A box of colored pencils, some plastic dinosaurs, and a framed photo of the three of them, Oliver between him and Emily. Nathaniel picked up the photo. It had been taken on a summer vacation on the Amalfi Coast in Italy, 2 years before the accident. Oliver was smiling, but his eyes seemed distant. Nathaniel was looking at his phone, not at the camera. He opened the desk drawer and found school notebooks, electronic games, and at the bottom, a homemade photo album he had never seen. He sat on his son's bed and opened the album. The first photo stunned him. It was Emily holding a baby, not Oliver, but one of the twins. Underneath, in Oliver's neat handwriting, it read, "Sophie sleeping, first day at the orphanage." The date indicated 4 years ago. Page after page, the album revealed a parallel life his family had led while he devoted himself to work. Emily reading to children at the orphanage, Oliver helping decorate a Christmas tree with handmade ornaments, the twins taking their first steps, with Oliver clapping proudly, birthday parties, picnics, afternoons of painting. Nathaniel wasn't in any of the photos. On the last page, there was an envelope. Inside, a drawing by Oliver, the same family of 5 people the twins had mentioned. Below it, written in the uneven handwriting of a child, "My heart family. One day we'll all be together." Nathaniel closed the album, unable to hold back tears. How could he have been so blind, so absent? While he built a financial empire, Emily and Oliver created meaningful connections, an expanded family he knew nothing about. He left the room with the album in his hands and went to his office. This room had always been his refuge, his pride. Now the walls covered with diplomas and awards felt like they were accusing him. Each framed certificate represented hours stolen from his son. Each trophy was a moment lost forever. He sat in the leather chair and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. There lay the last physical reminder he had of Emily, her journal. He'd never had the courage to read it after her death, perhaps out of fear of what he might find. With trembling hands, he opened it to the last written pages. Nathaniel is getting more distant. Yesterday, Oliver stayed up until 10 to show his father the science project he won first place for. Nathaniel arrived at 11 and went straight to his office. In the morning, he left before Oliver woke up. "My heart breaks to see the look on my son's face. He's already given up on getting his father's attention. I'm grateful every day for my volunteer work at the orphanage." Oliver found in the twins the unconditional love he deserves. "I spoke with Eleanor about the possibility of adoption. She thinks we have a chance. Now I need to find a way to bring it up with Nathaniel. I know it won't be easy, but I have hope. Maybe Sophie and Clara are exactly what our family needs to reconnect." That was the last entry. Weeks later, the accident happened, and Emily never had the chance to bring up the idea of adoption. Nathaniel closed the journal, devastated. His house, which he had always seen as a symbol of success, now felt like a mausoleum of lost opportunities. The wide, elegant rooms only amplified the emptiness of his existence. His routine, once seemingly efficient, now revealed itself for what it was: an escape. Working late, waking up early, visiting the cemetery once a month, rituals to avoid facing the loneliness he himself had created. He sat on the living room sofa, surrounded by the kind of luxury that meant nothing. The city lights shimmered through the large windows, but he had never felt more alone. He couldn't stop seeing the twins' identical smiles. The way they spoke of Oliver with such affection, how they kept his drawing as a treasure, and above all on how Emily and Oliver had been present in their lives, while he had been absent in his own son's. A strange sensation began to grow in his chest. It wasn't just guilt or regret. It was something more, a need, a calling. He wanted to go back to the orphanage. He wanted to learn more about those girls who meant so much to his family. Perhaps, Nathaniel thought, it wasn't too late to honor Oliver and Emily's wish. Maybe, through the twins, he could find a way to redeem his failures as a father and husband. For the first time in 3 years, Nathaniel planned the next day around something other than work. He would return to Hope Haven. He didn't know exactly what he would do or say, but he felt he needed to be there. Nathaniel woke before the alarm. For the first time in years, it wasn't work that got him out of bed, but a different purpose. He dressed without haste, choosing more casual clothes, jeans and a simple shirt instead of his usual suit and tie. Looking at himself in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. He had a quick breakfast and left. It was Saturday, the day Emily and Oliver used to visit the orphanage. There was a certain symmetry in that he couldn't ignore. He arrived at Hope Haven shortly after 10 in the morning. Yay. The red brick building looked more alive under the sunlight, with the sounds of children playing in the side yard. For a moment, he hesitated at the door. What would he say? What excuse would he make to explain why he was there? Before he could decide, the door opened. Eleanor was carrying a box of decorations, while a teenage girl held the door for her. "Mr. Reeves," Eleanor said, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you today." Nathaniel cleared his throat. "I was in the area and—" The lie sounded false, even to his own ears. "Actually, I don't have a specific reason. I just felt I should come." Eleanor looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "We're setting up a little party for one of the boys' birthdays. If you don't mind the mess, you're welcome to come in." The inside of the orphanage was bustling with activity. Children of various ages helped hang colorful balloons in the main hall. Staff members arranged tables and chairs. The atmosphere was quietly joyful, very different from the somber image he had in mind for an orphanage. "It seems like a happy place," he commented, following Eleanor to her office. "We do what we can," she replied. "We can't change their past, but we can offer them a worthy present and hope for the future." In her office, Eleanor gestured for him to sit while she poured 2 cups of tea. "I imagine you have questions about Sophie and Clara," she said, sitting behind her desk. "Yes," Nathaniel admitted. "I'd like to know more about them." Eleanor sighed, as if deciding where to begin. "The girls arrived on our doorstep one rainy October night, almost 6 years ago. Someone left them outside, wrapped together in one blanket. No note, no information. They were just newborns." Nathaniel felt a pang in his chest, imagining 2 tiny infants abandoned in the dark. "Did you try to locate the parents?" he asked. "The police investigated, of course, checked local hospitals, but found no records of twin girls born during that period. Whoever left them here didn't want to be found. And since then, they've only had each other. And us, of course." Eleanor took a sip of tea. "They're extremely close, even for twins. Wherever one goes, the other follows. When one falls ill, the other refuses to eat until her sister gets better. It's an extraordinary bond." "Were there any adoption attempts?" Nathaniel asked hesitantly. Eleanor lowered her cup. "A few families showed interest over the years, but adopting twins is a challenge in itself. Most prefer just one child, and separating Sophie and Clara was never an option we considered." Silence hung between them for a moment. "Emily began coming here shortly after they were born," Eleanor continued. "At first just to read stories to the older kids, but when she met the twins, something special happened. She started visiting more often, and eventually she brought Oliver. And I never knew," Nathaniel muttered to himself. "Emily mentioned you had other priorities," Eleanor said gently. The phrase, though kindly delivered, hit Nathaniel like an accusation. He had prioritized everything but his family. "What was Emily like with them?" he asked, trying to picture the scene. Eleanor's expression softened. "Wonderful. patient, loving, present. She brought clothes she sewed herself, books, small gifts, but mostly she brought her time and attention. The girls adored her. And Oliver. Oliver was like a big brother to them. He taught them games, told them silly stories that made them laugh until they almost fell over. He protected them from the older kids, a truly special boy. The words struck Nathaniel deeply. What kind of father doesn't know his own son? A noise at the door interrupted their conversation. Sophie and Clara were peeking timidly through the slightly open doorway. "Come in, girls," Eleanor invited. "Mr. Reeves is visiting today." The twins walked in hand as always. They wore simple but clean clothes, jeans, shorts, and matching t-shirts, except for the colors. Their red hair was tied in slightly messy ponytails. "Hello," Nathaniel said, attempting to smile. "Hi," they both answered in unison, still cautious. "The girls can show Mr. Reeves the garden," Eleanor suggested. "If he'd like, of course." Nathaniel nodded, grateful for the opportunity. "I'd love that." Sophie, the more talkative one, held out her hand to him. "Come on. We have a special place." The special place was a small flower bed in the far corner of the garden. Wildflowers grew in apparent disorder, but Nathaniel soon realized there was a pattern. The flowers formed the letter O. "Oliver planted them with us," Clara explained, kneeling beside the flowers. "He said that way we'd always remember him. Even when he couldn't come anymore," Sophie added. "You take really good care of them," Nathaniel commented, touched by the simple gesture. "Aunt Emily taught us," Clara said. "We have to water them every day, but not too much." "I didn't know my son liked gardening," Nathaniel admitted. Sophie looked at him curiously. "There's a lot you don't know about Oliver." The childish frankness caught him off guard. "I think you're right," he finally replied. "Why didn't you ever come with them?" Clara asked, her green eyes seeming to look right through him. The question felt like a slap. "How do you explain to a 5-year-old that you were too busy building an empire that now means nothing?" "I made mistakes," he said simply. "A lot of mistakes." Sophie nodded as if she understood perfectly. "We make mistakes too, but Ms. Eleanor says the important thing is to learn from them." "Your Miss Eleanor is a wise woman," Nathaniel replied. The girls kept showing him around the garden, the tree Oliver taught them to climb, the bench where Emily told stories, the swing Oliver had fixed himself. Every corner held a memory Nathaniel didn't share. At the end of the tour, they returned to the main building. The birthday party had begun, and the twins ran off to join it. Nathaniel stayed behind, watching. "They like you," Eleanor commented, appearing by his side. "They do. They wouldn't have shown you Oliver's garden if they didn't." Nathaniel remained silent, absorbing the information. "They're special," he finally said. "Yes, they are," Eleanor agreed. "Just as Oliver was." Nathaniel felt an odd kinship with the twins. Children who started life with no one but each other. Now at 5, they still only had one another. No parents, no family. He had once had a small family, just Emily and Oliver. Now he had nobody else, just a vast empty house and a void no professional success could fill. "May I come back another day?" he asked, surprising even himself. Eleanor smiled slightly. "Our doors are always open, Mr. Reeves." As he left the orphanage, Nathaniel knew he would return. He had no idea what he was looking for there, or what he could offer 2 orphaned children. He only knew that, for the first time since the accident, he'd found something that made the emptiness less overwhelming. Visits to Hope Haven became part of Nathaniel's routine in the following weeks. It started with just Saturdays, then he added Wednesdays, leaving the office early, something unthinkable months before. His colleagues noticed the change, but no one dared to comment. The once predictable and methodical Nathaniel Reeves had become an enigma. Mr. Reeves, the board scheduled a meeting for Wednesday at 4:00. Rebecca, his longtime assistant, informed him one morning. Nathaniel hesitated for only a second. "Reschedule it for Thursday, please." "But, sir, Mr. Peterson is coming all the way from Chicago and—" "Thursday, Rebecca," he repeated with an undeniable firmness. "I have an unbreakable commitment on Wednesday." The unbreakable commitment was to help set up new bookshelves in the orphanage's reading room. Nathaniel never imagined he'd rather spend an afternoon assembling furniture than closing $1 million deal, but that was exactly what was happening. At first, he only observed the twins from a distance, exchanging a few words occasionally. The girls, in turn, studied him curiously, as if trying to decide whether he was truly trustworthy. There were awkward silences when neither party knew what to say. Then, on a rainy Wednesday, Eleanor asked for help fixing a broken shelf in the library. Nathaniel, who had never been particularly skilled with tools, he always hired people for any repairs at home, surprised himself by agreeing immediately. "You're holding it wrong," Sophie said, appearing beside him as he struggled with a screwdriver, trying to tighten a particularly stubborn screw. "Really?" Nathaniel asked, trying not to smile at the little figure with crossed arms and a serious expression. "How should I hold it?" "Like this," Clara explained, positioning herself on the other side. "You need to grip closer to the tip and turn with force, but not too much. Oliver taught us," Sophie added with a hint of pride in her voice. The mention of Oliver still hurt like a fine needle in his heart, but it was a different pain now. There was a bittersweet pleasure in hearing about his son from the twins' perspective. It was like discovering pieces of a puzzle he never knew existed. "Oliver could fix things?" he asked, genuinely curious. His 9-year-old son fixing things. "He fixed the swing in the garden when the chain broke," Sophie said proudly. "And the door on Ms. Eleanor's cabinet that made that squeaky noise," Clara added, imitating the sound of a rusted hinge with perfect comedic timing. "He helped Mr. Frank paint the fence last summer," Sophie continued. "He got covered in white paint. Aunt Emily got mad at us, but then she laughed." Nathaniel nodded, absorbing another facet of his son he never knew. Oliver, the little handyman. Who would have guessed? He'd always pictured Oliver following in his footsteps in the business world, not realizing his son had completely different talents and interests. With the twins' technical supervision, he finally secured the shelf. The sense of accomplishment over such a simple task was surprisingly satisfying. Unlike closing a major deal, there was something tangible, immediate, about seeing his work done. "You two are good helpers," he said, putting the tools back in the box. "We can help you with more stuff," Sophie offered eagerly. "We know how to do lots of things," Clara confirmed with a solemn nod, and that's how it started. Small projects around the orphanage, a chair with a loose leg, a dripping faucet, a torn curtain. Nathaniel discovered he enjoyed working with his hands, especially with the twins around, telling endless stories about Oliver and Emily. During these moments, the girls would unknowingly reveal more about the life his wife and son led when he wasn't there, how Emily brought homemade cookies and let the girls help decorate them with colorful icing, how Oliver created elaborate treasure hunts through the orphanage hallways, hiding small treats for the younger kids. Each story was a revelation, a window into a parallel life that took place while he was locked in meeting rooms, a life filled with laughter, kindness, and small adventures that now existed only in the twins' memories. On a particularly sunny Saturday, Eleanor suggested a picnic in the orphanage garden for all the children. Nathaniel arrived early, bringing fruit and juices he had bought along the way. As he helped lay out blankets and organize the children into groups, he noticed that many of them didn't have proper outdoor shoes, just worn slippers or sneakers that were too tight. On Monday, he arrived with dozens of new pairs of sneakers in various sizes and styles. "We're not in need of charity, Mr. Reeves," Eleanor said upon seeing him unload the boxes from his imported car. "This isn't charity," he replied, not pausing in his task. "It's a practical necessity. How can they run and play without proper footwear? Consider it an investment in fewer scraped knees and fewer ER visits." Eleanor studied him for a moment, then smiled slightly, accepting the practical explanation. "Well, when you put it that way, thank you." The twins were thrilled with their new shoes, jumping and twirling through the garden like tiny whirlwinds of energy. Sophie chose a purple pair with pink laces, while Clara preferred a light blue pair with silver stars. Nathaniel watched them from the porch when Clara tripped on a tree root and fell, scraping her knee on the concrete path. Before he realized what he was doing, he was already at her side, kneeling on the ground to check the injury. "It's not too bad," he said, gently cleaning the dirt away with a handkerchief from his pocket. "Just a little scrape. It'll heal soon." Clara looked at him with big, teary green eyes. "It hurts." "I know," he answered softly, surprised by his own tenderness. "Do you know what Oliver did when he got hurt?" The girl shook her head, lower lip trembling slightly. "He took 3 deep breaths and said, 'The pain is already going away.'" Nathaniel didn't even know where that memory had come from. A forgotten afternoon in the park, Oliver at 5, a scraped knee, Emily cleaning the wound, while he, Nathaniel, tried to calm their son. Clara inhaled deeply once, twice, 3 times. "The pain is already going away," she repeated, almost like a spell. And she smiled, a small smile that lit up her freckled face. Something happened inside Nathaniel at that moment, a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time, a connection he thought lost forever. He laughed, a surprising sound even to himself. He couldn't remember the last time he had truly laughed, lightly, without the weight of loss crushing his chest. Visiting the orphanage became the highlight of his week. Nathaniel started finding excuses to show up more often. A special book delivery for the library, a quick visit to check on a repair he'd done, an extra dessert from a French bakery he'd happened to buy. Rebecca, his assistant, was perplexed by the changes in his schedule, the rescheduled commitments, the delegated meetings. Nathaniel Reeves, the man who never missed a meeting for anything, now said things like, "It can wait until tomorrow, and handle it without me this time." "Are you all right, Mr. Reeves?" she dared to ask on a particularly atypical day, when he announced he'd be leaving at 3 in the afternoon. "Never better, Rebecca," he replied, realizing it was true. At the orphanage, he helped with the simplest tasks, reading stories, supervising homework, playing hide-and-seek. He discovered he was terrible at hide-and-seek, too big for obvious hiding spots, too clumsy to fit into corners. But the children loved it when it was his turn to seek, deliberately prolonging the search time. The twins were his constant companions, often hanging on his arms as he walked through the garden. At first, the orphanage staff watched him curiously, then with acceptance, and finally with something that looked like approval. "You're good with them," said Martha, the orphanage cook, watching him help the twins bake cookies. "You're patient." "I never thought I would be," Nathaniel admitted, covered in flour up to his elbows. On one particularly happy afternoon, after a successful session planting daisies in the garden, Sophie casually declared, while washing her hands at the outside sink, "We love you, Uncle Nate." Uncle Nate. The nickname had come about naturally after one of the younger children couldn't pronounce Nathaniel. He had never corrected it. But that simple declaration of love hit him like lightning. The words got stuck in his throat, unable to form a reply. "You don't have to say anything," Clara said, sensing his discomfort with that peculiar intuition children sometimes have. "We just wanted you to know." That night, driving home under a starry sky, the twins' statement echoed in his mind. Love, a word he hadn't heard directed at him in so long. A responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready to accept. As he approached his upscale condominium, panic began to set in. What was he doing? Forming bonds with abandoned children, allowing himself to become emotionally involved? What if he couldn't give them what they needed? He had failed as a father once before. He hadn't been there for Oliver when it mattered. He'd missed precious years buried in work, missing school presentations, soccer games, moments of connection that would never come back. Would it be different now? Or would he end up disappointing Sophie and Clara too? What if another family adopted them first? How long would they stay in the orphanage? What if he built this bond only to watch them leave? Or worse, what if something happened to them, like it happened to Oliver and Emily? Could he survive another loss? He parked in the underground garage and remained there, engine off, staring into the darkness. The fear grew like a wave, threatening to swallow him. It would be safer, easier to pull back now before the attachment deepened. The next morning, he called Eleanor before going to the office. "I won't be able to come today," he said curtly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Or tomorrow. I have important meetings I can't postpone." "I see," Eleanor replied after a pause. "The girls will miss you. Please tell them. I have work." The excuse sounded weak even to him. "I will. We'll look forward to seeing you whenever you can come, Mr. Reeves." He spent the whole week buried in work, as in the old days. Long hours at the office, business lunches, conference calls late into the night. His secretary seemed relieved by the return to normalcy, though she sometimes looked at him curiously when he paused mid-sentence, distracted by a thought. But there was no real normalcy. His apartment, once a quiet refuge, now felt unbearably empty. The solitary meals lost what little flavor they had. The work that used to absorb him now felt mechanical and meaningless. He'd catch himself staring at the phone, trying to resist the urge to call the orphanage and ask about the twins. Could he manage not knowing if Clara had learned to tie her shoelaces by herself? If Sophie had finally managed to read that challenging book they'd been working on together? Worst of all were the constant thoughts about the girls. What were they doing? Did they miss him? Were they hurt that he'd suddenly disappeared? Did they need him for some little emergency? A broken toy, a drawing to admire, a scraped knee that needed the 3-breath ritual? On the third day, he dreamed of Oliver. In the dream, his son looked at him with disappointment, holding the twins' hands. "You're doing it again, Dad," Oliver said in the dream. "Running away when things get real." He woke with a start, his face wet with tears. On the fourth day, the weight of his absence became unbearable. In his luxurious office, surrounded by reports and charts, Nathaniel couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting back to the orphanage, to the 2 little redheads who had brought light into his life. Suddenly, he made a decision. He picked up the phone and cancelled all his meetings for the day. Rebecca's eyes widened, but she asked no questions as he rushed past her desk toward the elevator. He drove over the speed limit to Hope Haven, feeling every second as an eternity. What would he say? How would he explain his disappearance? Would the children forgive him? When he arrived, his heart pounded. He found the twins sitting on a bench in the garden, beneath Oliver's favorite tree, quietly drawing side by side. He paused a few yards away, watching them for a moment. So small, so vulnerable, yet so resilient. "Hi," he said simply, when he finally found his voice. They looked up at the same time, and their freckled faces lighting up instantly when they recognized him. There was no accusation, no reproach, just pure childish joy, the kind of immediate forgiveness only children can offer. "You came back," Sophie exclaimed, running to hug him so tightly he almost toppled over. Clara followed her sister, more reserved but just as happy. "We missed you, Uncle Nate." "I missed you too," Nathaniel admitted, feeling the knot in his throat loosen. "Very much." Clara pulled away for a moment, taking 2 sheets of paper from the bench. "We made these for you," she said shyly, extending the drawings. Nathaniel took them. On the first, 3 figures held hands under a smiling sun. He was recognizable by the suit drawn with a black pen, while Sophie and Clara had vibrant red hair and huge grins. In the second drawing, a solitary figure stood in a large house surrounded by grey clouds and raindrops. The message was clear, even for 5-year-olds. Together they were happy. Apart, they were sad. They're beautiful," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You're not going away again, are you?" Clara asked, her small hand gripping his firmly, as if afraid he might vanish at any moment. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Nathaniel knelt to their eye level. "I'll try not to leave again. But sometimes adults have to work, do things." "You don't like us anymore?" Sophie asked directly, with that cutting honesty children possess. "Of course I do," Nathaniel said immediately. "I care about you both very much." "Then why did you disappear?" Sophie insisted. Nathaniel took a deep breath. How to explain fear and insecurity to such small children? Sometimes grown-ups get scared," he finally said. "Scared of what?" they both asked in unison. "Of caring too much," he answered honestly. "Of losing what they love." The girls exchanged looks, having another silent twin conversation. "That's silly," Sophie declared at last. "If you're scared of losing it, is it better not to have it at all?" The child's wisdom hit him hard. Wasn't that exactly what he was doing, avoiding connections out of fear of suffering again? "You're right," he admitted, smiling despite the tears threatening to spill. "It's really silly." The girls dragged him back into their routine as if he had never left. They showed him new drawings, the books they were reading, the flowers they had planted. Life regained its colors and sounds. Later, while the twins were having their afternoon snack, Nathaniel looked for Eleanor in her office. She received him with a look of both relief and caution. "They've been making those drawings every day," Eleanor commented. "They hoped you would come back so they could give them to you in person." Nathaniel nodded, feeling a fresh wave of emotion. "They're really special." "They missed you a lot," Eleanor said bluntly. "They asked about you every hour, every day." "I know I disappeared without explanation," he began. I understand your fear," Eleanor interrupted gently. "Becoming attached means becoming vulnerable. It's easier to stay distant or protected, especially after the loss you've suffered." "It's also new to me," he confessed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I never thought I'd feel this way again, that I'd care so much. I don't know what I'm doing, what I'm feeling. No one really knows in the beginning," Eleanor replied with a compassionate smile. "Not even those who haven't endured a loss like yours, but avoiding these feelings doesn't make them any less real. It only deprives us of the chance to experience them." Nathaniel nodded, her words echoing inside him. "The girls need you," Eleanor went on, "and if I may say so, you seem to need them as well." He couldn't deny it. His attempt to stay away had only shown him how important the twins had become in his life. Without them, his days felt cold and empty again. Just mere existence without purpose. "I can't promise I won't mess it all up," he finally said. I'm not exactly a great role model as a father." "No one's asking you to be perfect," Eleanor replied. "Just to be present. The rest, you'll figure out together." That night, as he left the orphanage, Nathaniel looked up at the lights shining in the windows of the old brick building. Somewhere inside, two little twins were probably already in their pajamas, maybe telling each other stories before sleep. He made a silent promise to himself. He wouldn't run away anymore. He didn't know where this road would lead, but he was willing to find out. Step by step, day by day, he was ready to learn how to live, to feel, to connect again. For the first time in a long time, the drive back home didn't feel so lonely. Rain pounded against the mansion's windows as Nathaniel walked through the silent corridors. His footsteps echoed on the wooden floors, reminding him how alone he was in that immense space. Almost 2 months had passed since he found the twins at the cemetery, and his life had completely changed. He stopped in front of Oliver's bedroom door. Although he visited the orphanage regularly now, something held him back from going through his son's belongings, as if keeping them untouched might somehow keep part of him alive. But tonight, something felt different. Maybe it was the storm, or Sophie's casual comment earlier that day about how Oliver used to say she drew almost as well as he did. Nathaniel realized he had never truly looked at his son's drawings, not attentively. He turned the doorknob and stepped inside. The room was exactly as before, except for a fine layer of dust gathering on the surfaces. He walked to the bookshelf where several labeled boxes contained Oliver's schoolwork over the years. He grabbed a box, labeled with his son's final school year, and sat on the bed. Inside, colorful folders separated the subjects. At the bottom, he found a hardcover notebook he didn't recognize. It didn't look like schoolwork, it was more personal, like a journal or sketchbook. The first page contained only Oliver's name and a date, 3 months before the accident. Flipping through it, Nathaniel found drawings that surprised him with their quality. His son had talent, something he too, consumed by meetings and reports, had never noticed. The early drawings depicted landscapes, animals, and scenes from school. But as he went on, a recurring theme appeared. 2 small girls, clearly identical, with red hair in messy pigtails, Sophie and Clara. In one drawing, the twins were playing with blocks in what looked like the orphanage's recreation room. In another, they were in the garden helping plant flowers. The level of detail was impressive for a 9-year-old. Oliver really observed them with care and affection. Nathaniel turned another page and stopped, his heart racing. This drawing was different. It showed 5 people holding hands in front of a house. Him, Emily, Oliver, and the 2 twins. One family. Beneath it, in careful handwriting, Oliver had written, "My sisters, I wanted a bigger family with them. Nathaniel felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. The notebook trembled in his hands as he stared at those simple but profoundly revealing words. Oliver hadn't just liked the girls, hadn't just enjoyed playing with them during orphanage visits. He saw them as sisters. He wanted them to be part of the family. Turning more pages, Nathaniel found other drawings of the same family of 5, one at the beach, one at a dinner table, different settings, but the same 5 characters united. On the last page, Oliver had attached a real photo. It showed him between the twins, the 3 of them smiling broadly for the camera. Under the photo, another message. Mum said one day she'll talk to Dad about adopting Sophie and Clara. I hope he says yes. The notebook slipped from his hands, falling to the floor, the photo sliding out. Nathaniel picked it up with trembling fingers. How had he never seen this picture before? How had he never known his son's deepest wish? The answer was simple and painful. He had never really been present. As the storm raged outside, a different kind of storm brewed within him. Oliver wanted the twins as part of the family. Emily planned to discuss adoption with him. Then fate intervened, taking them before they could realize this dream. Could that be his path now? Following in his son's footsteps, fulfilling what Oliver and Emily never had the chance to do. The question felt too big to answer in the silence of that lonely night. But for the first time, Nathaniel allowed himself to consider the possibility, not as a way to fill the hole left by his family, but as a natural continuation of the love Oliver and Emily had begun to build. He looked again at the photo in his hand. 3 smiling faces, 3 entwined lives. Perhaps, he thought, there was still time to honor that connection in the way his son would have wanted. Morning came bright and promising after the previous night's storm. Nathaniel woke up early, Oliver's notebook resting carefully on his bedside table. He hadn't slept much, but he felt strangely energized, as if a major decision had been made in the deepest part of his being. During breakfast, he called Rebecca and announced he would be taking a few days off. She was momentarily speechless. In 15 years of work, Nathaniel had never taken unplanned time off. "Is everything okay, sir?" she finally asked, genuinely concerned. "Everything is great, Rebecca," he replied with a lightness that surprised both of them. "I've just realized there are things more important than contracts and meetings." He drove to the orphanage with the windows down, feeling the fresh morning air. Oliver's notebook lay on the passenger seat, a silent passenger guiding his journey. When he parked in front of Hope Haven, he felt a certainty he hadn't experienced in years. He was exactly where he needed to be. The children were having breakfast when he entered. The twins spotted him first, their little faces lighting up the moment they recognized him. "Uncle Nate!" they shouted in unison, running toward him, ignoring the caretaker's protest that they should finish eating first. Nathaniel knelt down to greet them, hugging them tightly. Something had changed after seeing Oliver's drawings. The affection he felt for the girls now seemed validated, as though he'd received a posthumous blessing from his son. "I came to spend the day with you," he announced to the twins' delight. "If Miss Eleanor allows it, of course." Eleanor, who was watching from the kitchen door, nodded with a small smile. "The girls have class this morning, but they'll be free after lunch." "Perfect. Can I help with anything until then?" Eleanor seemed momentarily surprised by the offer. "Well, we're reorganizing the library. An extra pair of hands would be helpful." And so the morning flew by with Nathaniel sorting books, fixing small damages, and assembling new shelves. He worked happily, feeling useful in a way he wasn't used to. In the corporate world, his worth was measured by billion-dollar mergers and strategic acquisitions. Here, it was the librarian's smile when a shelf was finally level, or the children's excitement at easily finding their favorite books. After lunch, the twins dragged him outside to show the new sprouts in the flower bed they had planted together. Sophie talked non-stop, describing each plant with the seriousness of a budding botanist. Clara, quieter, simply held his hand firmly, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. "What do you two want to do today?" Nathaniel asked, sitting on the bench beneath Oliver's favorite tree. The twins exchanged conspiratorial looks. "Can we go to the park?" Sophie asked. "A real park, not just our garden." The request caught Nathaniel off guard. Taking the girls outside the orphanage was something he hadn't considered. Would it be allowed? Did he have the right to do so? We need to ask Miska Eleanor, he replied carefully. To his surprise, Eleanor not only agreed but seemed to approve. It would be wonderful for them to have a different afternoon, she said, signing the permission slip. Just have them back by dinner time at 6. The municipal park was only a few blocks from the orphanage. They walked hand in hand, the twins between him, Nathaniel shortening his long stride to match their quick little steps. They passed store windows, people hurrying on the sidewalk, a world the girls seldom experienced. Does everyone live in houses? Clara asked, observing the buildings around them. Most do, Nathaniel answered. Some people live in apartments, which are like small homes inside big buildings. Then why is that person sleeping on the sidewalk? Sophie asked, pointing at a man curled up in tattered blankets outside a closed shop. The innocent question caught him off guard. How do you explain social inequality to a 5-year-old? Not everyone has a home, he finally said. Some people face difficulties and end up living on the streets. Like us, who don't have a home, Clara asked softly. Nathaniel stopped, kneeling to meet their eyes. No, not like you. You have Hope Haven. You have a bed, food, people who care for you. That's a home. But it's not a family, Sophie noted, with the disarming wisdom of a child. Nathaniel felt his heart clench. No, it's not a traditional family. But, he hesitated, unsure how to continue. But what? Clara asked. But family isn't just about who lives in the same house, he finished, finding the right words. Family is people who care for each other, who protect each other, who love each other. The twins considered his statement with the serious attention children give to big philosophical ideas. So, are you our family now? Sophie asked, quite directly. Her question hovered between them like a delicate bubble. Nathaniel felt a knot in his throat. I care for you both very much, he answered honestly, and I'll always protect you if I can. That seemed to satisfy them for the time being. Clara smiled and took his hand again. Let's go to the park. The rest of the afternoon was pure joy. The twins ran across the grassy fields, tried every swing and slide, amazed by their freedom. Nathaniel watched, feeling a mix of happiness and a certain sadness. Why had he never brought Oliver to this same park? Why had he wasted so many moments like this, buried in work that now seemed so unimportant? When Clara slipped and scraped her knee lightly, she ran straight to him for comfort. Nathaniel cleaned the wound with a handkerchief, applied a band-aid he now always kept in his pocket, a lesson learned since the day they got new shoes, and soothed her gently. Remember what we do when we get hurt? He asked. Clara took 3 deep breaths. The pain is already going away, she recited, then flashed a brave smile. Nathaniel felt something expand in his chest, certainty, purpose. They returned to the orphanage in time for dinner, as promised. The twins wouldn't stop talking about their adventure at the park, describing every detail to the other children as if they'd been to a faraway country. Nathaniel watched from the doorway, feeling both part of the scene and like an outside observer. Did he belong here? Could he truly become part of this world? When the girls went off for their baths, he sought out Eleanor in her office. The director didn't look surprised to see him. They seem to have had a wonderful afternoon, she commented, inviting him to sit. It was enlightening, Nathaniel replied, choosing his words carefully. I wanted to talk to you about something important. Eleanor folded her hands on the desk, waiting patiently. I've discovered something recently, he continued, pulling Oliver's notebook from his bag. My son. He saw Sophie and Clara as sisters. Apparently, he and Emily had discussed the possibility of adopting them. Eleanor didn't look surprised. Emily mentioned it a few times. She was waiting for the right moment to talk to you about it. Then the accident happened, Nathaniel said, feeling the familiar sting of loss, though now less raw, more like an old scar that sometimes aches with the weather. Yes. Silence settled between them for a moment. How does the adoption process work? He asked at last, the words coming out with difficulty. Eleanor studied him closely. It's a complex process, Mr. Reeves. It involves social worker evaluations, home visits, financial reviews, background checks. It takes time. Time isn't an issue, Nathaniel replied quickly. nor our resources. Sale is not about money or influence, Eleanor gently interrupted. It's about stability, commitment, emotional capacity to raise two children who have already experienced abandonment. The system needs to be sure you not only want this, but that you're prepared to be a father. The word father weighed heavily on Nathaniel's father. He had failed so completely at that role before. What made him think this time would be different? I wasn't a good father to Oliver, he admitted, finally voicing the painful truth. I was always busy, always distracted. I missed so much. And it terrifies you, Eleanor said softly. The fear of making the same mistakes. Nathaniel nodded, unable to speak. May I offer an observation, Mr. Reeves? Eleanor asked. When he nodded, she continued. The man who walked into this orphanage 2 months ago is not the same man sitting here now. What do you mean? The Nathaniel Reeves I first met was a man closed off by his grief, unable to connect. The man I see now spends entire afternoons playing with children, fixing shelves, taking them to the park, carrying band-aids in his pocket. He hadn't thought of it that way. The person who has changed the most these weeks is you, not the girls, Eleanor went on. They've always been affectionate, always ready to love. You're the one relearning how to open up. Her words hit him deeply. It was true. Something fundamental had shifted within him, slowly, almost unnoticed. But is that enough? He asked, the uncertainty obvious in his voice. Can I really be the father they deserve? No one knows for sure if they'll be a good parent until they're in the situation, Eleanor answered with a kind smile. But I can say you're already acting like one. And most importantly, you're aware of your past mistakes. That's more than many manage. Nathaniel let her words sink in. A faint glimmer of hope grew inside him. What do you suggest I do? He finally asked. Continue as you are. Spend time with them, get to know them better, let them get to know you. Meanwhile, I can put you in touch with a social worker who can explain the formal process. No rush, no pressure. Nathaniel nodded, feeling like a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He didn't have to make a definitive decision at that very moment. He could move forward step by step, day by day. Thank you, he said simply. May I ask a personal question? Eleanor said. When he nodded, she continued. Why are you considering this? Is it because of what you learned about Oliver and Emily's wishes, or is there more? The question made him think, why indeed? Was it just to honor his lost family's memory, or guilt for having been an absent father? Or was it something else, something growing inside him with every smile from the twins, every small hand that reached for his? In the beginning, maybe it was for them, he finally admitted, a way to connect with what I lost. But now, he paused, searching for the right words. Now it's because of Sophie and Clara and me. They brought something back to my life I didn't even know was gone. Eleanor smiled, satisfied with his reply. That, Mr. Reeves, sounds like an honest beginning. That night, before leaving, Nathaniel was invited to the twins' bedroom for story time, a ritual they had established in recent weeks. The girls were already in their beds, eyes shining with anticipation. What story tonight? He asked, sitting on the chair between their beds. Tell us one from when you were little, Sophie requested, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Nathaniel thought for a moment. When I was about your age, I lived near the sea. As he told the story, he watched the girls' attentive faces. At some point, Clara reached out and held his hand tightly. A simple gesture, but one full of meaning. Trust, connection. When he finished, they were both almost asleep. He stood, gently tucking their blankets in, then kissed each on the forehead, an action that had become natural in the last few days. Good night, princesses, he whispered. Good night, Uncle Nate, Sophie murmured drowsily. Will you come back tomorrow? Clara asked, eyes already closed. I will, he promised. Tomorrow and the next day and the next. Driving home under a star-filled sky, Nathaniel realized he no longer thought of his house as a place waiting for him in emptiness. He thought instead of Hope Haven, of the twins, of bedtime stories and scraped knees. At some point, without him noticing, his heart had made a choice. The idea of adoption, which had seemed daunting and uncertain just hours before, now shone like a real possibility. He wasn't sure exactly what it would look like or if he would be up to the task, but for the first time in years, Nathaniel Reeves was willing to try with all his heart to be the man and the father Sophie and Clara deserved. A whole weekend? Eleanor seemed surprised by Nathaniel's request. That's a big step. I need to know if I can do this, he replied with determination. If we're moving towards adoption, I want to be sure I'm prepared for the challenges of caring for them full-time. 3 weeks had passed since their initial conversation about adoption. Nathaniel had filled out forms, gathered documents, and spoken with the social worker. The process was moving forward, but one doubt persisted. Could he truly be a present father? Very well, Eleanor finally agreed. The twins can spend the weekend with you, as long as everything is properly arranged. The girls were overjoyed at the news. Sophie jumped for joy, while Clara, always more reserved, smiled quietly, eyes shining. We're going to stay at Uncle Nate's house? Sophie asked, still incredulous. Yes, if you want, Nathaniel replied. I've set up a special room for you. In fact, he had done much more than that. Over the past weeks, he had completely transformed the guest room. Light green walls, the twins' favorite color, 2 brand new beds with flowery covers, shelves stocked with carefully chosen books and toys. He even installed a star-shaped lamp that projected constellations on the ceiling, after learning Clara was afraid of the dark. On Friday afternoon, Nathaniel arrived at the orphanage with his heart racing. The twins were waiting by the entrance, each with a small backpack containing only their essentials. He had insisted they didn't need to bring much. Everything they might need would be at his home. All set for the big adventure, he asked, kneeling to their eye level. Yes, Sophie answered enthusiastically. Clara just nodded, holding her sister's hand tightly. Nathaniel knew this sign well by now. She was feeling anxious. Is something wrong, Clara? He asked gently. The girl hesitated before speaking in a small voice. What if we miss Hope Haven? Then you tell me and we'll come right back, he assured her. This is just a special visit, and you can call Miss Eleanor anytime. That seemed to comfort her. With their backpacks in the trunk and the girls securely fastened in the back seat, they headed for the Reeves mansion. The twins' eyes widened as they passed through the mansion's large gates. For children raised in the modest orphanage, the 3-story house with expansive grounds looked like a castle from a fairy tale. You live here by yourself? Sophie asked as they walked through the main entrance. Yes, Nathaniel replied, realizing how strange it sounded. So much space for just one person. It must be really lonely, Clara observed, taking in the surroundings with sharp eyes. It was, he admitted, but not today. The tour began. Nathaniel showed them the kitchen, where he had already set aside ingredients for cookies later. The living room with the big TV he rarely used. The backyard, where he'd set up a small, colorful tent for them to play in. Finally, they reached the room he had prepared. When he opened the door, the girls were silent for a moment, worrying him slightly. Did they hate it? Then Clara let out a quiet gasp, and Sophie ran inside. Is all this for us? Sophie asked, touching the floral quilt in awe. Everything, Nathaniel confirmed. What do you think? It's the prettiest room in the world, Clara declared with conviction, examining the bookshelf. That first night, they baked cookies together. The kitchen, once a place for solitary, hurried meals, became a joyful battlefield covered in flower. The girls' laughter echoed off the walls, filling empty spaces Nathaniel hadn't even realized were there. After dinner, macaroni and cheese, the twins' specialty as he'd discovered recently, they watched a children's movie. Without noticing, all 3 fell asleep on the sofa, a tangle of arms and legs, the film forgotten on the screen. Saturday dawned sunny and perfect for the main plan, a picnic in the national park outside the city. Nathaniel had prepared everything meticulously, sandwiches cut into fun shapes, fresh fruit, juice, and even some treats as a special surprise. On the drive to the park, the girls sang songs they'd learned at the orphanage. Nathaniel smiled, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. When was the last time he'd sung in the car? Probably with Emily and Oliver, years ago. The park was relatively empty that morning. They found the perfect spot under a large tree overlooking the lake. Nathaniel laid out a checkered blanket and arranged lunch while the twins explored nearby, always within his sight. "Look, Uncle Nate," Sophie called, pointing to a group of ducks swimming close to the shore. "Can we feed them?" "I brought some special seeds just for that," he said, taking a small bag from the picnic basket. They spent almost an hour feeding the ducks, the twins laughing each time the birds came close to eat from their hands. Clara, usually so cautious, showed surprising courage, letting the ducks nibble directly from her palm. After lunch, they explored the nearby trails. Nathaniel took turns carrying the girls on his shoulders when they got tired. Sophie wanted to see everything, investigate every flower, every insect. Clara collected small, colorful stones, tucking them carefully into her pocket. During a rest by the lake, Sophie asked abruptly, "Are you going to be our dad, Uncle Nate?" The question caught Nathaniel off guard. He knew the girls noticed his frequent visits, the gifts, the growing interest. But he hadn't realized they would connect it so directly to the possibility of adoption. I'm thinking about it," he answered honestly. "What do you two think about that?" "I'd really like it," Sophie replied promptly. "We could have picnics every day." Clara remained silent for a moment, thoughtful. "Would we live in your big house?" "Yes," Nathaniel nodded. "In the room I set up for you." "And we'd never go back to the orphanage?" she asked. The question carried a weight that surprised Nathaniel. For children so young, the orphanage was the only home they'd ever known. Moving on, even to something better, could be scary. "You can visit any time you want," he assured them. "Ms. Eleanor and everyone there will always be part of your life." Clara nodded, satisfied with that answer. After another moment of reflection, she looked directly at him with those penetrating green eyes. Oliver would like that. Those simple words hit Nathaniel deep. "Yes," he agreed, voice trembling. He really would. Driving back, Nathaniel realized something extraordinary. The weight he'd carried since the accident, that constant ache that had become part of him, was gone. Not entirely, perhaps it would never disappear fully, but it had transformed into something different, less oppressive. Glancing in the rearview mirror at the sleeping girls, hands still clasped even in slumber, he recognized a strange yet familiar feeling. Happiness. Not the fleeting rush from sealing a major deal, nor the brief satisfaction of professional success. Something deeper, more genuine. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Reeves felt truly happy. That night, after tucking the girls into their new beds, Nathaniel sat in the living room with a cup of tea, reflecting on the day. The challenges, the moments of uncertainty, the small mishaps, like Sophie spilling juice on her dress and crying inconsolably until he managed to fix it with water and a pile of napkins. But mostly, he thought about the sense of wholeness, how time had passed differently, not dragging on tediously, nor rushing by amid deadlines and meetings, but flowing naturally from moment to moment. He picked up the phone and dialed Eleanor's number. "How was the day?" she asked when she answered. "Perfect," Nathaniel replied. "Not perfect in the sense of having no problems, but perfect in the way I needed it to be." There was a moment of understanding silence on the other end of the line. "I think I've found my answer, Eleanor," he finally said. "I want to be a father to those girls." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Nathaniel dove into the adoption process with the same dedication he once reserved for business acquisitions. His home underwent a thorough inspection by the social worker, Margaret Wilson, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes that missed no detail. "Your house is safe for children, Mr. Reeves, but quite formal," she noted during her visit. "Kids need spaces where they can actually be kids." The next day, Nathaniel hired an interior designer with specific instructions to make the mansion more welcoming and child-friendly for 2 5-year-olds. A safety fence was installed around the pool, baby gates on the stairs, and the old ground floor meeting room was converted into a colorful play area. Meanwhile, he continued visiting the twins regularly. After the success of the first weekend, Eleanor allowed them to spend more days with him. Every experience confirmed what Nathaniel already felt in his heart. He wanted to be these girls' father. On a clear October afternoon, he received the call he'd been waiting for. Margaret Wilson informed him, that her preliminary assessment was complete, and he had been approved for the next stage of the process. It meant that, although there were still steps to go, the adoption was well on its way. That evening, he drove to the orphanage with a light heart. He could finally share the news with the twins. He pictured their bright faces, the excitement, the tight hugs. He even brought a small cake to celebrate the moment. Eleanor greeted him at the entrance with a warm smile. "By the look on your face, I assume you have good news." "The best," Nathaniel confirmed. "I passed the initial evaluation. There's still a road ahead, but Margaret thinks everything points to final approval." "I'm very happy for you, Nathaniel," Eleanor said sincerely. "The girls are in the recreation room. Would you like me to call them to my office so you can talk in private?" "Please do." While he waited, Nathaniel nervously straightened the papers on the desk. How could he explain the process to such young children? How would he make them understand that, even though he was initially approved, there were still a few months until the adoption would be final? Sophie and Clara entered, hand in hand as always. Their red hair was braided identically, probably done by one of the more skilled caregivers. "Hello, princesses," Nathaniel greeted, opening his arms for a hug. The twins ran to him, but something was different today, a caution in their movements that wasn't usually there. "I have some very special news," he announced, pointing to chairs so they could sit. "Remember, we talked about the possibility of you coming to live with me, of me becoming your dad." They nodded silently. "Well, I got a call today from Mrs. Wilson, the social worker who visited my house. She said I passed the first phase of the evaluation. That means we're on the right track for me to officially adopt you." Nathaniel waited for an outburst of joy, excited squeals, maybe even tears of happiness. Instead, what he saw stunned him. Sophie lowered her head, staring at the floor. Clara clenched her hands in her lap, fingers intertwined so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Aren't you happy about the news?" he asked. Confused, silence. Then a small sound escaped Sophie, somewhere between a sigh and a sob. Nathaniel knelt down, his concern growing. "What's wrong, sweethearts? You can tell me how you feel." Clara finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "We've heard that before." "What do you mean?" Sophie lifted her face, eyes glistening with tears. "Last year," she explained, "a couple used to visit us. They were nice, brought presents. The lady had yellow hair and smelled like flowers. They took us out on lots of outings," Clara continued. "They said we were going to be a family, that they had a yellow room waiting for us. They bought us new dresses," Sophie added, "and backpacks for a new school." Nathaniel felt a twist in his chest, already guessing the outcome. "But then," Clara said, her voice faltering, "they never came back." "Ms. Eleanor said they changed their minds," Sophie concluded. "They decided they weren't ready to have 2 kids. Nathaniel's heart broke at the story. He'd never imagined the twins had already endured such a cruel rejection. Their 5-year-old minds had learned the hard way not to trust adult promises, to shield themselves from disappointment. "I'm so sorry that happened to you," he said gently. "It must have been very sad." They nodded in unison. "I understand why you're worried now. You're afraid I'll change my mind too, aren't you?" Another pair of nods. Nathaniel took a deep breath. How could he prove his intentions were real? How could he build trust with children who had already been so deeply hurt? "You know, grown-ups sometimes make mistakes," he began. "Sometimes they promise things without really thinking. But I want you to know, I've thought about this a lot. It's not something I decided suddenly." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where they had played so many times in recent months. "When I lost Oliver and Emily, I thought I'd never be happy again," he continued, turning back to them. "I thought I'd never have a family. Then you two showed up, leaving that drawing on the grave, and something changed." The twins watched him intently. "I'm not adopting you because of Oliver, even though I know he'd be very happy. I want to adopt you because you both brought light back into my life. Because when we're together, the 3 of us are happier." He paused, then knelt before them again, taking their small hands in his. "But what matters most is what you want, what you feel. I don't want you to say yes just to please me. I really want to know, would you like to be a family with me?" Sophie and Clara exchanged another look, silently communicating. Finally, Sophie asked, trembling, "What if we do something wrong? Will you change your mind?" The question hit Nathaniel like a blow. The insecurity in those words was heartbreaking. What kind of fear did such little children carry, thinking they had to be perfect to be loved? "Never," he answered firmly. "We all make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. Family means loving each other even when we mess up." Clara studied him carefully. "You promise you won't give up on us?" "I promise with all my heart," Nathaniel said. "I'm here to stay, no matter what." After another moment of silence, Sophie finally spoke, her voice charged with held-back emotion. "We always wanted a real family, but we never thought someone like you would pick us," Clara added. "Someone like me?" Nathaniel repeated, puzzled. "Yeah," Sophie confirmed. "Someone important, with a big house and nice clothes." "We thought only babies got chosen by people like that," Clara explained. Nathaniel felt tears sting his eyes. "Sophie, Clara, that breaks my heart. You are both amazing just the way you are. Anyone would be lucky to have you as daughters." A tiny tear slipped down Sophie's freckled cheek. Clara, ever the protector, wrapped an arm around her sister's shoulders. "So," Nathaniel continued, "will you accept? Would you like to be my daughters? To become a family together?" The twins exchanged another glance. Then, simultaneously, they nodded. "Yes," Sophie replied, a small smile forming. "Yes," Clara echoed, her voice gaining confidence. Nathaniel opened his arms, and the girls rushed into his embrace. They stayed like that for a long moment, a hug sealing a promise, a new beginning, a family reborn from the ashes of loss. When they finally pulled apart, Nathaniel smiled, wiping away his tears. "Well, I think we have something to celebrate, right? I brought a special cake." The girl's eyes lit up. "Cake?" Sophie asked, suddenly more animated. "Chocolate cake," Nathaniel confirmed. Clara, usually so reserved, gave a small leap of joy. "Our favorite." As they walked to the kitchen, hand in hand, Nathaniel felt a deep peace. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He would have to earn the girls' trust day by day, proving with actions rather than words that his choice was final. But for the first time since losing Emily and Oliver, the future no longer looked like a barren horizon. It looked like a promise, a path lit by the chance to love again. Winter arrived, bringing a dry chill and skies of almost painfully bright blue. There were just 3 days left until the final adoption hearing, the culmination of months of evaluations, interviews, and preparations. On the eve of this big day, Nathaniel woke up with a certainty. He needed to visit Emily and Oliver. He hadn't returned to the cemetery since that first visit with the twins, nearly 6 months ago. Not out of avoidance, but because his life had become a whirlwind of new purposes and responsibilities. Regular visits to the girls, the renovations on the house, endless meetings with social workers and lawyers, it had all filled every spare minute. But that morning, watching the first rays of sunlight paint the sky a gentle pink, he knew it was time. He needed that moment of connection and closure before officially beginning a new chapter of his life. During breakfast, he called Eleanor. "I'd like to take the girls to the cemetery today," he explained. "I know it might seem odd, but—" "It's not odd, Nathaniel," Eleanor interrupted kindly. "In fact, I think it's important. The girls need to understand they're not replacing Oliver, but becoming part of a story that continues." 2 hours later, he parked outside the orphanage. The twins were waiting, bundled in their best coats, a Christmas gift he had given them early the previous week. Bright red that set off their red hair and added color to their pale winter cheeks. "Where are we going today, Uncle Nate?" Sophie asked, as curious as ever. Nathaniel knelt down to straighten their scarves against the cold. "I thought we could visit a special place. The place where I first saw you both, remember? The cemetery where Oliver and Emily are." The girls exchanged a glance. It wasn't the fun outing they might have expected on a Saturday morning. "Can we bring flowers?" Clara asked after a moment. Nathaniel smiled, touched by her sensitivity. "Of course we can. What kind of flowers should we bring?" "Daisies," Clara answered promptly. Oliver said they were Aunt Emily's favorites. Nathaniel's heart tightened at hearing that small detail he hadn't known. How could these little children know details about his own wife that he had forgotten or never noticed? They stopped at a florist on the way. The girls chose white daisies for Emily and sunflowers for Oliver, because he was bright like the sun, Sophie explained with a wisdom far beyond her 5 years. The cemetery was quiet that Saturday morning. Only a few solitary visitors walked among the tombstones, their figures dark against the thin layer of falling snow. Nathaniel held the twins' hands as they made their now familiar way to the Reeves family plot. As they approached, he felt a constriction in his chest, not the searing pain of before, but a gentle melancholy, like a distant echo of something that once tore him apart. The twins squeezed his hands at the same time, as if sensing his emotion. "It's here," he said, stopping in front of the grey marble headstone bearing Emily's and Oliver's names. The girls let go of his hands and moved closer with reverence, placing the flowers carefully at the foot of the stone. Clara arranged the daisies with meticulous precision, characteristic of her. Sophie remained silent, a rare state for her. "Hello, Oliver. Hello, Emily," Nathaniel began, feeling oddly calm. "I brought some special visitors today." Sophie took a step forward. "Hi, Oliver, we miss you. Thank you for the flowers you helped us plant. They're still pretty in the garden." Clara stayed quiet, gently tracing the letters of Oliver's name on the cold stone. "I came to thank you," Nathaniel continued. "For a long time, I thought I'd lost everything, that I'd never feel joy again." He paused, letting his tears flow freely. "But you led me to these 2 wonderful girls. Sophie and Clara brought light back into my life, and in 3 days, they'll officially become part of our family." Sophie looked at him with wide, attentive eyes. Clara kept tracing the letters of Oliver's name. "I want you both to know I'll never forget you. I'll never stop loving you. But I've learned that the heart can hold infinite love. I can love Sophie and Clara without diminishing in any way the love I have for you." A cold wind ruffled the girl's hair. Clara finally stood, pulled off her small backpack and took out a folded sheet of paper. "We made a drawing," she said softly, "for Oliver and Aunt Emily." Nathaniel watched as Clara carefully unfolded the paper and placed it under a small stone so the wind wouldn't blow it away. It was a typical children's drawing, a blue sky, a yellow sun, green grass. But what caught his attention were the central figures. A tall man, clearly him, identified by a suit drawn in pen, holding hands with 3 children, a boy with brown hair and 2 identical red-headed girls. Above them, 2 figures floated on clouds, a woman with long hair and a boy, both with wings. "This is our new family," Sophie explained. "But Oliver and Aunt Emily are still watching over us up in heaven." Nathaniel felt the air leave his lungs. The purity of that picture, the effortless acceptance only children manage when facing complex realities, it all hit him at once. "It's beautiful," he managed to say after composing himself. "Do you think they liked it?" Clara asked, worried. "I'm sure they did," Nathaniel replied, hugging her. "It's the perfect gift." They stayed a few more minutes. Nathaniel told Emily and Oliver about preparing for the girls, the changes in the house, plans for the future. He spoke as if they could hear, as though they were part of this new phase. When the wind began picking up, hinting at a change in the weather, Nathaniel knew it was time to leave. "I think we should go, girls. It's getting colder." Sophie and Clara nodded, giving one last look at the grave and the drawing they had left. "Bye, Oliver," Sophie said. "We'll come back to tell you what's new." "Take care of Aunt Emily," Clara whispered. "I learned a new piano song. I'll play it for you next time." As they walked back to the car, Nathaniel realized that something inside him had changed. Previous visits to the cemetery left him shattered, devastated by grief. He would go home feeling empty, drained of all energy. This time, however, he felt surprisingly light. Not that the pain was gone. Some part of it would always remain, but it was no longer at the center of his existence. It no longer defined who he was. "Uncle Nate," Sophie asked, interrupting his thoughts. "After Monday, can we call you Dad?" The question caught him off guard. The girls rarely spoke so directly about the upcoming adoption. "If you want to, yes," he answered carefully, "but you don't have to if you're not ready. We can stick with Uncle Nate for now. Sophie nodded, thinking it over. Clara, beside her, seemed to be reflecting in her usual serious way. I think I'll call you Dad, Sophie finally decided, but only after Monday when it's official. Me too, Clara agreed. Because then we'll be a real family. We're already a family, Nathaniel gently corrected. The paperwork just makes official what we already feel in our hearts. When they arrived home, not just his home now, but theirs, Nathaniel watched the girls run inside to their fully decorated bedroom. He heard their laughter echoing through halls that had been silent for so long. The mansion, once cold and impersonal as a museum, had transformed. Children's drawings hung on the walls. Toys were scattered in the living room. Small shoes lined the entrance. Colors, sounds, life. While making hot chocolate in the kitchen, listening to the girls chatter upstairs, Nathaniel thought about the strange path his life had taken. He never would have guessed, on that terrible day over 3 years ago when he got the news of the accident, that he could ever feel joy again. Emily and Oliver had left a void that would never be completely filled. No one could replace them, nor was that the intention. But Sophie and Clara weren't replacements, they were additions, new lights in a house darkened for too long. And for the first time since the accident, Nathaniel felt he was truly starting over, not erasing the past nor trying to recreate it, but building something new from its foundations, honoring Emily and Oliver's memory in the most meaningful way, by living a full life, rich with love and purpose. And as he carried the steaming mugs upstairs, he heard Sophie say to Clara, "We're going to be happy here, aren't we?" And Clara's soft answer, "I think we already are." Nathaniel paused, taking a deep breath to steady his emotions. Yes, he thought, they already were.